Yo, what's good, ChronoCrew champions? It's your boy Chronos, and welcome back to the madness. We're diving into part 2 of What If Deku Had Mahoraga's Adaptation? And trust me, things are about to get real unpredictable. You thought part 1 was wild? That was just Deku cracking the surface. Now he's adapting and dominating. Before we go any deeper into the chaos, smash that subscribe button, drop a like to help us hit that 100 like goal, and ring that bell so you never miss a beat in this multiverse saga. I see all the love you've been showing lately, and I appreciate every one of you for keeping this timeline alive. Let's go. The morning after the UA entrance exam, Izuku sat at his desk, anxiously refreshing his email every few minutes. A week had passed with no word on his results, and despite All Might's private assurances that he had performed exceptionally well, anxiety still gnawed at his stomach. "Izuku, are you still on that computer?" Inko Midoriya called from downstairs. "Your dinner's getting cold." "Just a minute, Mom," he replied, clicking refresh one last time before sighing in defeat. As he stood to leave his room, the doorbell rang, followed by his mother's surprised exclamation. "Izuku, there's mail for you." His heart leapt into his throat as he raced downstairs, nearly tripping in his haste. Inko stood in the entryway, holding a small, official-looking envelope with UA's prestigious seal emblazoned on its front. "It's here," she whispered, her eyes already welling with tears of anticipation. With trembling fingers, Izuku accepted the envelope. It was heavier than expected, suggesting something more substantial than a simple acceptance or rejection letter. He retreated to the living room, his mother hovering anxiously behind him as he carefully broke the seal. A small metal disc clattered onto the coffee table, instantly projecting a hologram into the air. All Might's massive form appeared, his trademark smile beaming at them from the projected image. "I am here as a projection," the symbol of peace announced dramatically. Inko gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. "All Might? Why is he the one delivering your exam results? I had to do a lot of paperwork for this, so please listen carefully," the hologram continued. "Young Midoriya, your performance in the entrance examination was nothing short of extraordinary. Not only did you score exceptionally high on the written portion, but your practical results were record-breaking." All Might's projected form gestured to a scoreboard that appeared beside him, displaying Izuku's name at the very top. 197 villain points, the highest in this year's cohort by a significant margin. But that's not all. All Might's grin somehow grew even wider. The entrance exam was not graded solely on combat prowess. After all, what kind of hero school would reject those who embody the true essence of heroism? The scoreboard shifted, revealing a second column of numbers. Rescue points, awarded by a panel of judges for acts of heroism during the practical exam. And for your selfless rescue of fellow examinee Achiko Uraraka, at great personal risk, you earned yourself 60 rescue points. Izuku's jaw dropped as he stared at his total. 257 points, nearly double the score of the second-place candidate. "Young Midoriya," All Might's voice softened with genuine pride. "You not only passed the exam, you absolutely shattered every record in UA's history. Welcome, my boy, to your hero academia." As the projection flickered out, Izuku sat frozen in disbelief until his mother's joyful sobbing broke the spell. She threw her arms around him, tears streaming down her face. "You did it, Izuku. You really did it," she cried, hugging him so tightly he could barely breathe. But Izuku barely noticed the constriction. His own eyes brimmed with tears as the reality finally sank in. He was going to UA High School. He was one step closer to becoming the hero he'd always dreamed of being. With shaking hands, he pulled out his phone to share the news with the one person who had believed in his dream from the beginning, even before All Might entered his life. To Kendo Itsuka, "Message, I got IN. Top score. Did you hear anything yet?" The response came almost immediately. From Kendo Itsuka, "Message, congratulations. Just got my letter too. I'm IN. 7th place. We did it, Midoriya-kun. Oh, and we're in the same class. 1A. Izuku's smile grew impossibly wider as he read the message. Not only had they both achieved their dream of entering UA's hero course, but they'd be continuing their journey together in the same classroom. All Might's training, adaptation, one for all, and now UA, everything is finally coming together, he thought, wiping away tears of joy. This is just the beginning. The morning of his first day at UA dawned bright and clear, cherry blossoms dancing on the spring breeze, as Izuku adjusted his uniform tie for the 5th time. The red tie and gray blazer of UA's prestigious uniform still felt surreal against his skin, like a costume rather than clothing he deserved to wear. "Izuku, you'll be late if you don't leave now," Inko called from downstairs. "Coming," he replied, giving his reflection one final inspection before grabbing his backpack. Inko waited by the door, her eyes immediately welling with tears at the sight of her son in his new uniform. "You look so grown up," she whispered, straightening his already perfect tie. "I'm so proud of you."
Izuku smiled, embracing his emotional mother. "Thanks, Mom, for everything."
As he stepped outside, he spotted a familiar figure waiting at the corner. Kendo, her orange hair tied in its usual side ponytail, now complemented by the same UA uniform but with the standard skirt rather than pants. "Midoriya-kun," she called, waving enthusiastically. "Ready for our first day as official hero students?"
Izuku jogged to meet her, grinning. "As ready as I'll ever be. I still can't believe we made it."
"Believe it," she replied, playfully punching his shoulder with a slightly enlarged fist. "We earned this, though I heard you broke some kind of record? Something about obliterating a zero-pointer with a single punch." Izuku blushed, rubbing the back of his neck. "It wasn't that impressive. I just did what anyone would do in that situation." Kendo laughed, falling into step beside him as they headed toward the train station. "Always so modest. But seriously, your quirk has developed incredibly over the past year. You've been holding out on me during our training sessions." If only she knew the full truth about One for All, about All Might's mentorship, about the vestiges that now occasionally spoke to him in his dreams. But those were secrets Izuku had promised to keep, even from his closest friends. "I've been pushing myself," he offered vaguely. "My adaptation responds better to genuine challenges than to controlled environments." Their conversation shifted to speculation about their new classmates and teachers as they boarded the train to Mizutofu Station. By the time UA's imposing main building came into view, Izuku's initial nervousness had given way to bubbling excitement. "Class 1A should be on the first floor of the main building," Kendo noted, consulting the campus map on her phone. "Let's hope our classmates are friendly." "I'm sure they will be," Izuku replied optimistically, though a tiny part of him wondered if Bakugo had also passed the entrance exam. After their encounter with the slime villain, their relationship had remained strained but slightly less hostile than before. They located the classroom easily enough. A massive door labeled 1A in bold red letters, sized to accommodate students with gigantification quirks. Izuku took a deep breath, steeling himself before sliding the door open. The classroom beyond was already half full, students in various states of conversation as they waited for the instructor to arrive. Izuku's eyes immediately landed on a familiar explosive presence. Bakugo, feet propped on his desk, scowling at everyone and everything. "Figures he'd make it," Kendo muttered, noticing Izuku's gaze. Before either could decide where to sit, a bespectacled young man with neat dark blue hair approached them with mechanical precision, his hands making chopping motions as he spoke. "You're Izuku Midoriya, correct? The one who destroyed the zero-pointer with a single attack?" he asked, his voice formal and slightly intense. "I am Tenya Ida from Semi-Private Academy." "Ah, why yes, nice to meet you," Izuku replied, somewhat intimidated by Ida's formality. "I must admit, I misjudged you during the exam," Ida continued, bowing deeply. "While I was focused on the exam parameters, you perceived the true nature of the test. You have my utmost respect."
"Oh, thank you." Izuku wasn't quite sure how to respond to such earnest admiration.
"And you must be Itsuka Kendo." Ida pivoted toward her with the same robotic precision. 7th place in the entrance exam. A most impressive showing.
Kendo smiled, taking the intense greeting in stride. "Nice to meet you too, Ida-kun. Looking forward to working together."
As they made their way farther into the classroom, a cheerful voice called out from behind them. "Deku-kun, Kendo-san."
Izuku turned to see Uraraka bouncing toward them, her round face beaming with excitement. "We all made it into the same class. Isn't that awesome?"
"Deku?" Kendo questioned, raising an eyebrow at Izuku. "It's a nickname," he explained awkwardly, not wanting to delve into its originally derogatory nature. "I hope you don't mind me using it," Uraraka added, suddenly concerned. "I just thought it sounded like Dikairu. Like, you can do it." Her positive reinterpretation of the name that had once been used to mock him warmed Izuku's heart. "I don't mind at all," he assured her with a smile. Their conversation was abruptly interrupted by a tired voice from the doorway.
If you're here to socialize, then you can leave. This is the hero course. All three students turned to find a disheveled man with long black hair and bloodshot eyes wrapped in a yellow sleeping bag on the floor of the hallway. As they watched in bewilderment, he extracted himself from the sleeping bag to reveal a black outfit and a lengthy gray scarf, or what appeared to be a scarf until Izuku recognized the specialized capture weapon of the underground hero Eraserhead. It took you all 8 seconds to quiet down, the man grumbled, stepping into the classroom. Time is a precious resource. You're not very rational, are you? That's our teacher? Kendo whispered as they hurriedly took their seats. He looks like he hasn't slept in days.
I'm Shota Aizawa, your homeroom teacher, the man confirmed, his expression perpetually unimpressed. Put these on and meet me at the PE grounds. You have 15 minutes. He tossed a bundle of blue and white tracksuits onto the teacher's desk before shuffling back out, leaving the class in stunned silence. Is he serious? PE on the first day? Someone muttered from the back. I guess we'd better hurry, Kendo said, already grabbing one of the tracksuits in her size. Something tells me Aizawa-sensei isn't the patient type. 15 minutes later, Class 1A assembled on the PE grounds, all 20 students now dressed in UA's standard gym uniform. Aizawa stood before them, his expression as apathetic as ever.
Today we'll be conducting a Quirk Apprehension test, he announced without preamble. A Quirk Apprehension test? Several students echoed in confusion.
What about the entrance ceremony? The orientation? Uraraka asked hesitantly. Aizawa's eyes narrowed slightly. If you want to be heroes, we don't have time for such formalities. UA is known for its freestyle educational system. That applies to us teachers as well. He pulled out a smartphone, displaying a list of standard physical activities. You've all done these tests in middle school, but you weren't allowed to use your quirks. The Ministry of Education is still pretending we all have equal footing by prohibiting quirk use in standardized tests. It's illogical.
Midoriya, you finished first in the entrance exam. Step forward.
Izuku's stomach tightened as he moved to the front of the group, feeling all eyes on him. In middle school, what was your best result in the softball throw? Aizawa asked. 46 meters, sir, Izuku replied, recalling his mediocre performance.
Aizawa tossed him a softball that looked identical to the ones used in middle school fitness tests. Try it with your quirk this time. Do whatever you need to, just stay inside the circle.
Izuku stepped into the marked area, weighing the ball in his hand as he considered his approach. He could easily throw it a substantial distance with even 30% of one for all, but something in Aizawa's calculating gaze made him pause.
I know what you can do, Midoriya, Aizawa said, his voice low enough that only Izuku could hear. I've seen the footage from the entrance exam. You're holding back your power, which is rational to a point. But here, I want to see you at 100%. Show me what happens when you push your limits. Izuku's eyes widened. But sir, at 100% I might.
If you can't control your quirk, you don't belong here. Aizawa cut him off. Go all out, or I'll fail you on the spot.
The ultimatum sent a chill down Izuku's spine. Since receiving one for all, he'd never attempted to use its full power, fearful of the damage it might cause despite his adaptation quirk's protective capabilities. The highest he'd reached was 50% during the entrance exam, and even that had been a desperate measure.
Taking a deep breath, Izuku moved to the center of the circle. This is gonna hurt, he thought grimly, but I know I'll adapt. He closed his eyes, reaching deep within himself to the wellspring of power that was one for all. Instead of drawing just a portion as he usually did, he grasped for all of it, letting the energy flood his system without restraint. Full cowling, 100%, he whispered. The effect was immediate and spectacular. Green lightning erupted around his body, crackling with such intensity that it created visible distortions in the air.
The ground beneath his feet cracked from the sheer pressure of the energy he was emitting, and a powerful wind rushed outward in all directions, forcing his classmates to shield their faces. Behind him, fully visible to everyone present, the adaptation wheel manifested, larger and more intricate than ever before, spinning rapidly as it processed the overwhelming surge of power coursing through his system.
What the hell? Bakugo's shocked voice cut through the roar of energy. Izuku's muscles bulged, veins glowing green beneath his skin as he wound up for the throw. Pain flared briefly throughout his body before being systematically neutralized by his adaptation quirk, the wheel spinning faster with each adaptation it processed. With a roar that contained all his determination and resolve, Izuku hurled the ball skyward, the force of his throw creating multiple sonic booms as the softball tore through the sound barrier again and again. The ball vanished from sight, becoming nothing more than a distant speck before disappearing entirely. For several long seconds, everyone stood frozen, staring at the empty sky where the ball had been. Finally, Aizawa's device beeped. He turned the screen toward the class, a rare, small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. The display showed a sideways figure 8, the mathematical symbol for infinity. Infinity? Someone gasped. How is that even possible? Did he throw it into orbit? Another student wondered aloud. Izuku stood panting in the circle, the green energy dissipating as he released One for All's full power. The adaptation wheel behind him faded from view, having successfully processed and neutralized the strain of using 100%. His throwing arm trembled slightly, not broken, but definitely strained beyond what his quirk could fully mitigate in real time. Now that, Aizawa said, pocketing his device, is rational use of your power when asked for your maximum output. Izuku rejoined the stunned group, flexing his hand to assess the damage. It was sore but functional, a vast improvement over the shattered limb he would have sustained without adaptation. Dude, what kind of monster quirk do you have? A red-haired boy with spiky hair and sharp teeth asked, slapping Izuku's back enthusiastically. That was the manliest thing I've ever seen. It's called adaptation, Izuku explained, deciding to keep One for All's involvement private for now. It lets my body adjust to handle different types of strain or damage. And that will thing behind you? A girl with earphone jacks dangling from her earlobes inquired. It appears whenever my quirk is actively adapting to something new, Izuku said, which was true enough, if incomplete. Kendo caught his eye from across the group, her expression a mixture of awe and suspicion. She knew his quirk better than anyone besides All Might, and she'd clearly noticed the dramatic evolution in his abilities. I'll have to explain somewhat later, Izuku thought. At least a version of the truth that doesn't reveal One for All. Enough chatter, Aizawa interrupted. We have 7 more tests to complete. And remember, the person with the lowest combined score will be judged hopeless and expelled immediately. A collective gasp went up from the class, but Aizawa merely shrugged. Welcome to UA's Hero Course. The real challenge begins now. The remaining tests passed in a blur of activity as each student showcased their unique quirks. Izuku carefully modulated his use of One for All, keeping it at a manageable 30% for most events to avoid further strain on his already tender arm. Despite this self-imposed limitation, he performed exceptionally well, placing in the top 3 for nearly every test. Bakugo seethed visibly each time Izuku outperformed him, while others like Ida, Todoroki, and Yaoyorozu proved themselves formidable competitors as well. By the time they gathered for the final results, exhaustion had settled over the class like a heavy blanket. Aizawa displayed the rankings on a holographic screen. Izuku Midoriya, Momo Yaoyorozu, Shoto Todoroki, Katsuki Bakugo, Tenya Ida. Izuku's name at the top sent a fresh wave of murderous glares from Bakugo, but there was little time to dwell on it as everyone anxiously checked the bottom of the list to see who would be expelled. 20. Achiko Uraraka. The brown-haired girl's face fell, her usual cheerfulness replaced by devastation. I guess my quirk just wasn't suitable for these kinds of tests, she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. Izuku felt a pang of sympathy. Uraraka's zero gravity was incredibly useful in many scenarios, but the specific tests Aizawa had chosen hadn't played to her strengths. Oh, by the way, Aizawa said casually, deactivating the holographic display. I was lying about the expulsion. The class froze collectively, 20 pairs of eyes swiveling to stare at their teacher in disbelief. It was a logical ruse to draw out your maximum performances, he explained with a shrug, a sadistic smile briefly crossing his face. Relief washed over the students, none more visibly than Uraraka, who looked ready to collapse from emotional whiplash. Of course it was a lie, Yaoyorozu commented, though the slight tremor in her voice betrayed her own relief. It would have been illogical to expel someone on the first day when we've all demonstrated potential by passing the entrance exam. Aizawa's expression suggested he didn't entirely agree with her assessment, but he merely handed out a stack of curriculum guides before dismissing them back to the classroom. As the group trudged back toward the main building, Izuku's hand throbbed painfully enough that he finally admitted to himself he needed medical attention. Kendo-san, he said quietly, falling into step beside her, I think I need to visit the nurse's office. Could you let the next teacher know? Kendo's eyes narrowed with concern as she took in his strained expression. Your arm from the softball throw? I thought your quirk was supposed to prevent that kind of injury. It did, mostly, Izuku admitted. But using 100% still causes some strain that takes time to fully adapt to. Recovery Girl can speed up the process. Fine, but you owe me an explanation later, she said firmly. That was not the same adaptation quirk I've been training against for years. Izuku nodded, grateful when she didn't press further for the moment. As he headed toward the nurse's office, he couldn't help but marvel at how dramatically his life had changed. Just one day at UA, and already he'd pushed himself to new limits, outperformed his peers, and revealed capabilities he'd kept carefully hidden until now. Is this what it means to be on the path to becoming a hero? He wondered, flexing his sore hand. Always pushing beyond what seems possible. The spectral will briefly flickered into existence behind him, as if in response to his thoughts, before fading once more. Back again so soon, Midoriya-kun? Recovery Girl asked with a mix of exasperation and fondness as Izuku entered her office. What has Toshinori pushed you to do this time?
Actually, it was Aizawa-sensei, Izuku admitted, holding out his strained arm. He wanted to see 100% during the Quirk apprehension test.
Recovery Girl clicked her tongue disapprovingly. That man. Always pushing his students to breaking point on the first day. She examined Izuku's arm with professional efficiency. Well, at least your adaptation quirk prevented any serious damage.
Just some micro tears in the muscle fibers and minor stress fractures that are already beginning to heal naturally.
She planted a kiss on his forehead, her heal quirk accelerating the recovery process. Izuku felt the familiar warmth spread through his arm, followed by the equally familiar wave of fatigue. Thanks, Recovery Girl, he said, suppressing a yawn as he flexed his now pain-free hand. Don't make a habit of this, she warned, offering him a gummy candy. Your body may adapt to injuries, but repeatedly pushing yourself to extremes isn't a sustainable strategy.
Izuku nodded, accepting both the candy and the advice before making his way back to Class 1A.
The rest of the day passed in a blur of introductions and orientation activities. By the time the final bell rang, Izuku felt mentally and physically drained, but in the most satisfying way possible. So, about that explanation, Kendo said, appearing beside his desk as he packed up his notebooks.
Right, Izuku acknowledged, knowing he couldn't avoid this conversation. Want to walk home together?
They made it halfway to the train station before Kendo's patience finally ran out. Spill it, Midoriya-kun. What happened to you? You've always been strong and skilled, but today, that wasn't just adaptation. The wheel has never appeared like that before, and you've certainly never created sonic booms with a softball throw.
Izuku sighed, weighing his options carefully. While he couldn't reveal the truth about One for All, he owed Kendo some kind of explanation after years of friendship. My quirk evolved, he said, finally settling on a partial truth. Remember how I told you it adapts best to genuine threats? Well, during my training for the entrance exam, I pushed myself harder than ever before, deliberately putting myself in situations where my body had to adapt or fail. It wasn't entirely a lie. After all, integrating One for All had indeed forced his adaptation quirk to evolve rapidly.
The wheel appears more frequently now, he continued, and the adaptations are more comprehensive. Instead of just responding to individual threats, my body can now proactively enhance itself in anticipation of strain. Kendo studied him skeptically. That explains some of it, but not everything. The energy around you, the lightning, that's new.
A side effect of the evolved adaptation process, Izuku offered, hoping she wouldn't press further.
To his relief, Kendo seemed to accept this explanation, at least for now. Well, whatever happened, you've become incredibly powerful. Her expression softened into a smile. Just don't leave the rest of us too far behind. Okay? Izuku returned her smile, grateful for her understanding. Never. We're going to become great heroes together, just like we promised.
The following morning, Izuku arrived at UA feeling refreshed and eager for their first true hero training session. The class buzzed with anticipation as they took their seats, speculating about what form the training might take and which pro hero would be instructing them.
I heard All Might is teaching at UA this year. Kaminari, a blonde boy with an electricity quirk, commented excitedly. Imagine learning combat techniques from the symbol of peace himself. I'm more interested in Midnight's modern hero art class. Minoru Mineta, a diminutive boy with purple ball-shaped hair, replied with a disturbing leer. Izuku kept quiet, knowing more than he could share about All Might's teaching position. Instead, he reviewed his hero analysis notes, particularly the sections on urban combat tactics that might prove useful in their upcoming training. The classroom door burst open with theatrical force, silencing all conversation as a familiar booming voice filled the room. I am here. Coming through the door like a normal person, All Might stood in the doorway, resplendent in his Silver Age costume, striking a heroic pose that had several students gasping in awe. Izuku couldn't help but smile at his mentor's characteristically dramatic entrance, though he carefully schooled his expression to match the surprised excitement of his classmates. It's really him. All Might is actually teaching us? That costume is from the Silver Age, isn't it? A classic. The symbol of peace strode to the front of the classroom, his perpetual smile somehow even brighter in person than on television. Foundational Hero Studies, he announced, flexing dramatically with each word. For this class, we'll be building up your hero foundation through various trials. Let's jump right in with this combat training. The excitement in the room ratcheted up several notches. All Might gestured toward the wall, where panels slid open to reveal numbered containers. These are the costumes made based on your Quirk registrations and requests you sent before school started. Get changed and meet me at Training Ground Beta. The class erupted in cheers, everyone rushing to collect their hero costume before heading to the changing rooms. Izuku's heart pounded with anticipation as he opened case number 18, revealing the green and white costume he had designed with his mother's help, now professionally crafted with UA's cutting-edge support technology. 20 minutes later, Class 1A assembled at Training Ground Beta, each student now clad in their unique hero costume. Izuku's outfit consisted of a dark green jumpsuit with protective padding, reinforced gloves designed to withstand the pressure of One for All, a utility belt for support items, and his signature red boots. A respirator mask shaped like a smile covered the lower half of his face, while a hood with long rabbit-like ears completed the ensemble. Looking good, Midoriya, Kendo commented, approaching in her own costume, a teal chi-pao with black shorts, her hands left uncovered to freely use her big fist quirk. The bunny ears are cute. They're supposed to be reminiscent of All Might, Izuku admitted, rubbing the back of his head embarrassedly. My mom helped design it. Now that's adorable, she teased good-naturedly. Excellent. You all look so cool, All Might exclaimed as the last students arrived. Now, shall we begin, my wards? It's time for combat training. He explained the exercise. Indoor battles between teams of heroes and villains, centering around a nuclear weapon that the villain team must protect while the hero team attempts to capture it. Teams would be determined by lots, ensuring random partnerships and matchups. Izuku drew Lot B, making him part of the second hero team. Glancing at the board, he saw that his partner would be Kendo, a stroke of luck given their history of training together. Their opponents, representing the villain team, would be Katsuki Bakugo and Shoto Todoroki, arguably the two most powerful students in the class besides himself. Talk about a tough draw, Kendo muttered, eyeing their competition warily. Bakugo glared at Izuku with undisguised hostility, small explosions popping from his palms. Finally, a chance to put you in your place, Deku, he growled. Todoroki, a boy with distinctive half-red, half-white hair, remained aloof, observing Izuku with calculating heterochromatic eyes but offering no comment. Prepare yourselves, All Might announced. Team A and Team C will go first, with A as the heroes and C as the villains. The villain team gets a 5-minute head start to set up. Everyone else will observe from the monitoring room. As the first teams departed to prepare, Izuku pulled Kendo aside for a quick strategy session. This is going to be challenging, he admitted. Bakugo and Todoroki together make an incredibly formidable team. Kendo nodded, her expression serious. Bakugo's explosion quirk gives him both offensive power and mobility, while Todoroki's half-cold, half-hot makes him adaptable to almost any situation. She frowned thoughtfully. Though interestingly, I've only seen him use ice so far, not fire. I've noticed that too, Izuku confirmed, recalling Todoroki's performance during the Quirk Apprehension test. But even with just ice, he can create massive structures in seconds. The building will be a frozen fortress by the time we enter. And Bakugo will be gunning for you specifically, Kendo added, giving him a knowing look. There's clearly history there. Izuku sighed, nodding reluctantly. He's had an issue with me since we were kids. It got worse after my quirk manifested. He'll definitely come straight for me, probably leaving Todoroki to guard the weapon. A strategic smile curved Kendo's lips. So we use that to our advantage. You keep Bakugo occupied. I'll handle Todoroki and the weapon. Are you sure? Izuku asked, concerned. Todoroki's ice is extremely powerful. My big fist can break through ice, she replied confidently, enlarging one hand for emphasis. Besides, you're the only one who can match Bakugo's mobility with your enhanced abilities.
Izuku recognized the hint of skepticism in her voice when referring to his powers but chose not to address it now. Alright, I'll keep Bakugo busy as long as possible, giving you time to reach the weapon. But be careful, if he realizes our strategy, he might double back to help Todoroki.
Their planning was interrupted as All Might called for everyone's attention. The first match was about to begin, giving them a valuable opportunity to observe the training ground and assess their classmates' capabilities before their own battle. 40 minutes later, it was finally time for Izuku and Kendo's match. The first battle had ended with a hero victory, though not without significant property damage and several minor injuries. Izuku had carefully analyzed each participant's approach, noting strategies and mistakes that might inform his own performance. Second match begins soon, All Might announced. Villain team, enter the building and prepare your defenses. Your 5 minutes start now.
Bakugo and Todoroki departed for the designated building, though not before Bakugo shot Izuku one final threatening glare.
Remember our plan, Izuku said quietly to Kendo as they waited. I'll engage Bakugo, you go for the weapon. Use the capture tape if you get an opportunity, but the priority is securing the nuclear device. Kendo nodded, determination evident in her stance. Got it. And Midoriya? Don't let him bait you into doing anything reckless. I won't, he promised, though a part of him wondered if he could truly maintain his composure when facing Bakugo's inevitable provocations.
All Might's voice boomed through their earpieces. Villain team preparation complete. Hero team, your mission begins now.
Izuku and Kendo approached the designated building, a 5-story concrete structure designed to simulate an abandoned office complex. True to their predictions, frost already coated the windows and doorways, evidence of Todoroki's preparations within. Let's not use the main entrance, Izuku suggested, eyeing the ice-covered doorway. They'll be expecting that.
Instead, they circled around to a fire escape on the building's side, which showed minimal ice coverage. Using Black Whip carefully to avoid revealing too much of the secondary ability, Izuku helped Kendo ascend to the second-floor window, which they managed to pry open without triggering any obvious traps. The weapon is probably on the top floor, Kendo whispered as they slipped inside. Bakugo could be anywhere, though. As if summoned by her words, an explosion rocked the corridor ahead, smoke billowing toward them as Bakugo emerged, his costume's gauntlets gleaming menacingly in the dim light.
Found you, Deku, he snarled, a manic grin stretching across his face. Time to show everyone what a fraud you really are. Izuku motioned for Kendo to proceed with their plan. I'll handle this. Go find the weapon.
She nodded, immediately darting down an adjacent hallway while Bakugo remained fixated on Izuku.
Running away already? Bakugo taunted, raising his gauntlet arm. Think I'll let you off that easily?
He launched a massive explosion in Kendo's direction, but Izuku was faster. Activating full cowling at 30%, he intercepted the blast, shielding Kendo from the worst of it as she disappeared around the corner. Your fight is with me, Kaken, Izuku stated calmly, green energy crackling around his form.
Bakugo's eyes narrowed at the nickname. Don't call me that, you damn nerd. Acting all high and mighty with your fancy new powers. He lunged forward, explosions propelling him at frightening speed. I'll crush you. His palm detonated directly against Izuku's chest, the force enough to send most opponents flying through the nearby wall. But Izuku remained standing, barely moved by the impact. Behind him, the adaptation will flickered briefly into existence, processing and neutralizing the explosive force.
What the? Bakugo stared in disbelief. How did you? Izuku didn't waste the opening, countering with a controlled 30% punch that Bakugo barely dodged. The air pressure alone was enough to crack the wall behind him, demonstrating just how much Izuku was still holding back.
You're not the only one who's grown stronger, Kaken, Izuku said, settling into a fighting stance. I'm not the same helpless kid anymore.
Bakugo's shock quickly transformed into rage. So what? You think some late-blooming quirk makes you special? He adjusted one of his gauntlets, a sinister smile spreading across his face. Let's see how you handle this. These gauntlets store my sweat, nitroglycerin, the raw material for my explosions. When released all at once,
he pulled a pin from the gauntlet, aiming directly at Izuku. Die!
The resulting explosion was catastrophic, entirely disproportionate to the training exercise. A massive fireball engulfed the corridor, shattering windows and buckling support structures. The monitoring room erupted in gasps of horror as the camera feed temporarily whited out from the intensity of the blast. Young Bakugo, All Might's voice crackled through the communication system. That level of force is prohibited in this exercise. You could have killed your opponent.
But when the smoke cleared, Izuku still stood, though his costume showed signs of damage. The adaptation will behind him spun rapidly, having processed the explosive force in real time. His expression was calm but determined, unfazed by Bakugo's extreme attack.
"Is that all you've got?" he asked quietly.
Bakugo's face contorted with disbelief and fury. "Why won't you just stay down?" Meanwhile, several floors above, Kendo had reached the top level where, as predicted, Todoroki guarded the fake nuclear weapon. The entire floor was transformed into a winter landscape, ice covering every surface in intricate crystalline patterns. "Impressive," Kendo commented, alerting Todoroki to her presence. "But a bit excessive, don't you think?" Todoroki regarded her impassively, his heterochromatic eyes betraying no emotion. "It's sufficient. Your partner can't reach us here, and you can't defeat me alone." "We'll see about that," Kendo replied, enlarging both hands to massive proportions. With a powerful swing, she shattered the nearest ice formation, sending crystals flying in all directions.
Todoroki responded immediately, sending a wave of ice surging toward her. Kendo anticipated this, using her enlarged fists to punch through the frozen assault before it could immobilize her. The impact sent shards of ice flying, momentarily obscuring Todoroki's vision, an advantage Kendo immediately exploited by closing the distance between them. Back on the lower floor, Izuku had decided it was time to end his confrontation with Bakugo. While their battle had successfully kept the explosive teen occupied, allowing Kendo to reach the weapon, he couldn't risk further structural damage to the building. "I'm sorry, Kaken," he said, activating full cowling at 45%. Higher than his usual combat level, but still well within his control. "But this ends now." The sudden increase in power sent green lightning arcing dramatically across his body, cracking the floor beneath his feet. Before Bakugo could react, Izuku had closed the distance between them, moving faster than most eyes could track. "Delaware Smash," he called, delivering a controlled finger flick that generated enough air pressure to slam Bakugo against the far wall. Stunned but not defeated, Bakugo attempted to retaliate with another explosion. This time, Izuku was prepared. Black Whip erupted from his arms, the dark energy tendrils ensnaring Bakugo's limbs and immobilizing him before he could detonate his quirk. "What the fuck is this?" Bakugo roared, struggling against the energy bindings. "Since when do you have multiple quirks?" Izuku didn't answer, instead using the capture tape to secure Bakugo's wrists. "Villain captured," he reported into his communicator. "One down," All Might's voice confirmed. "Bakugo is eliminated."
With Bakugo secured, Izuku turned his attention upward. "I need to help Kendo with Todoroki," he thought, activating Black Whip to ascend rapidly through the building's internal structure.
He arrived on the top floor to find a battlefield of broken ice and destruction. Kendo had done remarkably well, her enlarged fists proving effective against Todoroki's ice constructs, but she was gradually being pushed back toward the exit, unable to reach the weapon as Todoroki continuously replenished his frozen defenses.
"Midoriya," she called, spotting him. "A little help here?"
Todoroki turned, his usually stoic expression showing a hint of surprise at Izuku's arrival. "You defeated Bakugo?" he asked, sounding almost impressed.
"He's been captured," Izuku confirmed, green energy still crackling around his form. "It's 2 against 1 now, Todoroki-kun." The dual-haired boy assessed the situation with cold calculation. "Doesn't matter. Neither of you can get past my ice." As if to prove his point, he slammed his right foot down, sending a massive wave of ice surging toward both heroes. Izuku acted on instinct, activating full cowling at 50%. "Smash!" he shouted, punching forward with controlled force.
The resulting air pressure shattered Todoroki's ice attack and continued onward, impacting the ceiling and walls with enough force to crack the building's structure. The entire floor shook ominously, supports groaning under the strain.
Kendo recognized the opening immediately. While Todoroki was momentarily distracted by Izuku's display of power, she circled around the perimeter, her enlarged hands allowing her to traverse the ice with unexpected agility. Before Todoroki could reposition, she had reached the nuclear weapon, placing both hands firmly on its surface. "Weapon secured," she announced triumphantly.
"Hero team wins." All Might's voice boomed through their communicators.
Todoroki's shoulders slumped slightly in defeat, though his expression remained as impassive as ever. He regarded Izuku with new interest, particularly the dissipating energy of full cowling.
"Your quirk," he said quietly. "It's not just adaptation, is it?" Izuku hesitated, unsure how to respond. Before he could formulate an answer, All Might's voice interrupted once more.
"Excellent work, young heroes and villains." returned to the monitoring room for review. As they made their way back, Kendo fell into step beside Izuku, bumping his shoulder playfully. Nice teamwork, though you nearly brought the building down on us at the end there. Izuku laughed sheepishly. Sorry about that. I got a bit carried away. Well, it worked out, she replied with a grin. We make a pretty good hero team, don't we? Looking at Kendo's confident smile, at the building where they just secured their first victory as heroes in training, Izuku felt a surge of pride and belonging. This was what he'd worked for, what All Might had helped him achieve. Not just power, but purpose. Not just adaptation, but growth. Yeah, he agreed, returning her smile. The best. Darkness surrounded Izuku as he drifted in the familiar void where the vestiges of One for All resided. Unlike his previous visit, the space seemed more defined. Glowing energy pathways connected the shadowy silhouettes that stood before him. Daigoro Banjo's form was clearest, having already established a connection. But another figure now stepped forward. A woman with short dark hair and a gentle yet fierce expression materialized, her form gaining clarity as she approached. A cape fluttered behind her despite the absence of wind in this strange realm. So you're All Might's successor, she said, her voice warm but powerful. I'm Nana Shimura, the seventh bearer of One for All.
Izuku's consciousness flared with recognition. All Might's mentor, he thought, unable to speak but knowing she could hear him.
Nana nodded, a proud smile crossing her face. Tashinori has chosen well. Your adaptation quirk has accelerated your connection to us far beyond what should be possible. She extended her hand, and Izuku felt something intangible yet profound pass between them. My quirk was float, the power to levitate myself and neutralize gravity's pull. With One for All's enhancement, you'll be able to carry others and maintain flight for extended periods. Beside her, Daigoro grinned. Between Black Whip and Float, your mobility options are becoming quite impressive, kid.
But why now? Izuku's thoughts questioned. Why are these powers manifesting so quickly? Your adaptation quirk is resonating with One for All in unprecedented ways, Nana explained. It's seeking out the most useful abilities to help you survive and evolve. My flow will give you aerial maneuverability to complement Daigoro's Black Whip. There's no time to waste, Daigoro added, his expression growing serious. Something's coming, a test that will push even your remarkable adaptability to its limits. Before Izuku could inquire further, Nana placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. Remember, these powers aren't just tools, they're connections to those who came before. We're with you, guiding you. Now wake up, young hero. The world needs you. Izuku bolted upright in bed, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool night air flowing through his open window. The digital clock beside his bed read 3:17 a.m. Float, he whispered, extending his hand and focusing on the new sensation Nana had shared with him. To his astonishment, his body immediately began to rise, hovering several inches above his mattress. The spectral will appeared briefly behind him, processing this new ability before fading once more. 3 quirks now, Izuku thought, slowly lowering himself back onto his bed. One for All super strength, Black Whip, and now Float. What did Daigoro mean about a test coming? Sleep eluded him for the remainder of the night.
Bakugo, Aizawa's stern voice cut through the classroom the following morning. Your performance yesterday was unacceptable. Using lethal force against a fellow student shows a severe lack of judgment unbecoming of a hero. Bakugo slouched in his seat, his typical scowl deepened by the public reprimand. He wasn't even hurt, he muttered defensively, casting a venomous glare at Izuku. Only because Midoriya's quirk allowed him to adapt to the explosion, Aizawa countered sharply. Had it been anyone else, we'd be planning a funeral instead of a lesson. Consider this your first and final warning. Control your temper, or find another career path. The classroom fell into uncomfortable silence. Izuku kept his eyes fixed on his notebook, unwilling to meet Bakugo's furious stare. He could practically feel the explosive teen's rage radiating across the room. Now then, Aizawa continued, his tone shifting to businesslike indifference. Today we need to decide on a class representative. Under normal circumstances, I'd simply appoint someone, but Principal Nizu insists on fostering democratic principles. His disdain for the process was evident in his voice.
Immediately, hands shot up across the classroom, enthusiastic voices clamoring for the position.
Pick me. I'll be the best rep ever. Choose me, please. Amid the chaos, Ida stood abruptly, his rigid posture commanding attention. If I may suggest, he proclaimed, chopping the air methodically with his hands, the most logical approach would be a simple election. The person with the most votes clearly holds the trust of their peers. A sensible suggestion, Yaoyorozu agreed, nodding approvingly. Fine, Aizawa sighed, already climbing into his yellow sleeping bag in the corner. Just keep it down. Wake me when you're done. The results were tallied quickly. Izuku Midoriya, 4 votes Tenya Ida, 3 votes Momo Yaoyorozu, 2 votes. The remaining votes were scattered among other students, with Bakugo notably receiving 0 despite voting for himself.
Emmy, Izuku stammered, genuinely shocked by the outcome. But I didn't even know. The results are clear, Ida announced, though disappointment briefly flashed across his features. Midoriya will serve as class representative, with myself as deputy.
Actually, Izuku said, standing slowly, I think Ida should be our representative. The class fell silent, all eyes turning to him in surprise.
You demonstrated true leadership during the battle trial, Izuku continued, addressing Ida directly. And just now with the election idea, you understand what it means to lead better than I do. He smiled self-deprecatingly. I'm still figuring out how to handle my own abilities. The class needs someone who's confident in themselves. A murmur of approval rippled through the room. Ida's eyes widened behind his glasses, genuine emotion breaking through his typically formal demeanor.
Midoriya, he said solemnly, I accept this responsibility with the utmost seriousness. I will not let you or our classmates down. So it's decided, Yaoyorozu confirmed. Ida as representative, myself as deputy. An efficient resolution. Across the room, Kendo caught Izuku's eye, giving him an approving nod. Giving up the spotlight to someone better suited. That's real hero material, her expression seemed to say. Aizawa's tired voice drifted from the corner. If you're quite finished with this dramatic display of democracy, we have actual learning to accomplish today. That afternoon, Class 1A gathered at the entrance of UA, prepared to board a bus for their off-campus rescue training exercise. Izuku adjusted his hero costume, now repaired following the damage sustained during the battle trial.
The improvements made by the support department were immediately apparent. Reinforced padding at stress points, more flexible material to accommodate his movements, and enhanced shock absorption in the gloves and boots.
As they boarded the bus, Tsuyu Azui, a girl with frog-like features, settled into the seat beside him. Midoriya-chan, she said bluntly, characteristic of her straightforward nature. I've been wondering about your quirk.
Izuku tensed slightly. What about it?
That wheel that appears behind you when you use your powers, she continued, tapping her finger against her chin. How does it work exactly? Karo. Well, Izuku began hesitantly, aware that several classmates were now listening in. It manifests whenever my body needs to adapt to something new or extreme. Different symbols on the wheel represent different types of adaptation. Like what? Kaminari chimed in from across the aisle, his interest piqued. Physical damage, energy absorption, environmental conditions. Izuku listed, carefully avoiding specifics about one for all. The wheel processes whatever challenge I'm facing and helps my body develop countermeasures. That's incredibly versatile, Yaoyorozu commented thoughtfully. No wonder you scored so highly in the entrance exam. But that doesn't explain the lightning, Bakugo interjected acidly from the back of the bus. Or those black tendrils you used. Or how you suddenly started floating during training yesterday. A tense silence fell over the bus. Izuku swallowed hard, feeling the weight of his classmates' curious stares. My adaptations sometimes manifest as secondary abilities, he offered, the partial truth sticking in his throat. The more I train, the more my quirk evolves to meet different challenges. Like developing sub-quirks? Kirishima asked excitedly. That's so manly. Before Izuku could respond, Aizawa's voice cut through the conversation. We're arriving at the USJ. Prepare to disembark.
Saved by the bell, Izuku thought, relief washing over him as attention shifted away from his abilities. But Bakugo's suspicious glare from the back of the bus promised this discussion wasn't over. The unforeseen simulation joint, USJ for short, loomed before them as they exited the bus, its massive dome gleaming in the afternoon sunlight. Designed to simulate various disaster scenarios, the facility was a cornerstone of UA's hero training program. Inside, a figure in a bulky space suit awaited them, arms spread in welcome. Welcome to the USJ, the figure announced, voice slightly muffled by the helmet. I'm 13, the space hero,
and I'll be supervising your rescue training today alongside Aizawa-sensei.
While 13 began explaining the facility's different disaster zones, flood, landslide, conflagration, ruins, and mountain, Izuku noticed Aizawa scanning the area with increasing concern.
"Where's All Might?" Aizawa asked 13 quietly. "He was supposed to meet us here." "About that," 13 replied, holding up 3 fingers discreetly. "He apparently reached his limit during his morning patrol. He's resting in the teacher's lounge." Izuku understood immediately. All Might had exhausted the 3 hours he could maintain his muscular form for the day. A flicker of worry passed through him, knowing his mentor was pushing himself too hard juggling hero work and teaching. 13 continued addressing the class. "Before we begin, I have 1, or 2, or 3, or perhaps 4 points to make." The space hero raised a finger emphatically. "My quirk, Black Hole, can be used to save people from disasters, but it can just as easily kill. I've no doubt that there are some among you with similar abilities."
The students listened attentively, particularly those with more destructive quirks like Bakugo and Todoroki. In our superhuman society, quirks are strictly regulated and their usage monitored. It's easy to forget that one wrong move could be deadly. 13 bowed slightly. "Aizawa's physical fitness test showed you your potential. All Might's battle training taught you the dangers of using your powers against others. This class will teach you how to use your quirks to save lives." Izuku felt a surge of inspiration at 13's words. This was the true essence of heroism, not combat or glory, but the fundamental act of saving those in need.
The moment of reflection was shattered by a sudden disturbance at the central plaza. The air seemed to warp and distort, darkening into a swirling vortex of purple-black mist. From within this ominous portal, figures began to emerge, dozens, then scores of them, each bearing the unmistakable air of villainy.
"Gather together and don't move," Aizawa barked, his capture weapon already loosening around his neck. 13, protect the students.
"What's happening?" Kaminari asked nervously. "Is this part of the training?" Izuku's eyes narrowed as he assessed the situation. "Those are real villains," he stated grimly. The adaptation will flickering momentarily behind him as his body prepared for potential conflict. From the midst of the villains emerged 2 distinctive figures. A lean man covered in disembodied hands, including one gripping his face like a macabre mask, and the swirling mist itself, which had coalesced into a vaguely humanoid form with glowing yellow eyes. "Eraserhead and 13, the mist villain observed in a cultured voice. "According to the schedule we procured, All Might should be here as well. Has there been some change of plans?"
"I knew it," Aizawa muttered, pulling his distinctive yellow goggles over his eyes. The media intrusion yesterday wasn't random. It was these scumbags scouting the campus.
"Where is he?" the hand-covered villain demanded, voice raspy with irritation. "We've come all this way and brought so many playmates. Where is the symbol of peace? I want to smash him to pieces." As Aizawa prepared to engage the villains, Izuku turned to Ida. "Class rep," he whispered urgently. "You have to get back to the school. Your engine quirk makes you the fastest. You need to alert the teachers." Ida hesitated, conflict evident on his face. "I can't just leave everyone. This is what leadership means," Izuku insisted. "Sometimes the best way to help is to get reinforcements. We're counting on you." Before Ida could respond, the mist villain expanded dramatically, engulfing the students in clouds of dark vapor. "I'm afraid I can't allow that," he intoned. "Greetings. We are the League of Villains. Forgive our audacity, but we've come to UA High School, this bastion of heroism, to end the life of All Might, the symbol of peace." Chaos erupted as Bakugo and Kirishima lunged at the mist villain, their attacks passing harmlessly through his nebulous form. The distraction was enough for the villain to complete his plan. "My job is to scatter you all and have you tortured to death," the mist announced, expanding outward to encompass the entire group.
Izuku felt the ground disappear beneath his feet as the warp gate transported him away from his classmates. The last thing he saw was 13 attempting to use Black Hole to counter the villain's quirk before darkness swallowed him completely.
Water rushed up to meet Izuku as he plummeted into what he recognized as the flood zone, an artificial lake designed for aquatic rescue training. 2 other forms splashed nearby, Tsuyu and Kendo, also victims of the villain's teleportation.
Activating float instinctively, Izuku halted his descent just before striking the water's surface. The spectral wheel flashed briefly behind him as he extended the quirk's effect to his classmates, lifting them gently from the water.
"Thanks, Midoriya-chan," Tsuyu said, shaking water from her face. Karo, your floating ability is new, Kendo observed, eyeing him with a mixture of curiosity and concern.
It's a recent adaptation, Izuku replied, scanning the water below them. But we've got bigger problems.
Look, beneath the surface, shadowy forms circled. Aquatic villains waiting to ambush them. One surged upward, a shark-like humanoid with razor teeth bared, only to be met with Tsuyu's powerful tongue, which whipped out to slam the villain back into the depths. We need to regroup with the others, Kendo stated, enlarging her fists in preparation for combat. Midoriya, can you get us to the central plaza? We might find Aizawa-sensei there.
Izuku nodded, concentrating on maintaining float while carrying both girls.
Hold on tight. He propelled them upward, gaining a better view of the facility. What he saw sent ice through his veins. Aizawa was at the central plaza as expected, but he was engaged in combat with dozens of villains simultaneously. Despite his impressive skills, he was clearly outnumbered.
We have to help him, Izuku decided, beginning their descent toward the plaza.
Wait, Tsuyu cautioned. Look closer.
As they approached, a new threat became visible, an enormous, muscular creature with exposed brain tissue and a beak-like mouth. Its skin was dark purple-black, and its eyes showed no intelligence, only primal savagery.
What is that thing? Kendo whispered, apprehension evident in her voice.
They watched in horror as Aizawa engaged the creature, only to have his elbow shattered with casual ease. The monster proceeded to slam their teacher repeatedly into the concrete, blood spattering with each impact.
Smash! Izuku roared, releasing float and driving downward with a 50% Detroit smash aimed directly at the creature's head. The adaptation will materialized and spun rapidly as Izuku channeled more of One for All's power than he'd previously dared in combat. His fist connected with devastating force, creating a shockwave that cleared the surrounding area of lesser villains. To his shock, the creature barely flinched, turning slowly to face him with dead eyes. Nomu, the hand-covered villain called from nearby. Leave the teacher. We have a new player. The monster Nomu dropped Aizawa's broken form and focused its full attention on Izuku, who quickly deployed Black Whip to retrieve his teacher's unconscious body.
Ajui-san, Kendo-san, Izuku called, tossing Aizawa's limp form to them with his energy tendrils, get him to safety. This thing is on a completely different level. We can't just leave you. Kendo protested, though she helped Tsuyu catch their teacher.
You have to, Izuku insisted, the green lightning of One for All intensifying around him. Protecting Aizawa-sensei is the priority, and your presence will only give me more to worry about. Before they could argue further, Nomu lunged with frightening speed. Izuku barely managed to dodge, the creature's fist cratering the ground where he'd stood a moment before. In the back of his mind, Izuku felt the presence of both Nana and Daigoro stirring to awareness. Use our powers together, Nana's voice guided. Float for mobility, Black Whip for range, and One for All for impact. This thing has shock absorption, Daigoro added. You'll need to overcome it with pure power. Izuku nodded mentally, settling into a fighting stance as his classmates retreated with their injured teacher. The adaptation will spun continuously now, analyzing the Nomu's capabilities in real time. Interesting, the hand-covered villain observed, scratching his neck compulsively. You're not all might, but you have potential. Nomu was bioengineered to kill the symbol of peace. I wonder how you'll fare. Oklahoma Smash, Izuku shouted, combining float and Black Whip to execute a spinning aerial maneuver that caught Nomu with a powerful kick. The impact sent the creature skidding backward, away from where Tsuyu and Kendo were escaping with Aizawa. Nomu quickly recovered, however, launching itself back at Izuku with terrifying speed. What followed was a brutal exchange of blows, each impact reverberating throughout the USJ. Izuku found himself pushed to previously unexplored limits. The adaptation will constantly processing the Nomu's overwhelming strength and speed. Midoriya, your body is adapting, Nana encouraged. Just like this Nomu has shock absorption, you're developing impact resistance. It was true, with each thunderous collision, Izuku felt his body becoming more resilient. The adaptation will processing and counteracting the damage in real time. He gradually increased One for All's output, reaching 50% throughout his entire body without the strain he'd previously experienced.
Why won't you break? The hand villain snarled, watching as Izuku matched Noma blow for blow. Because that's not what heroes do. Izuku replied, launching himself forward for another attack. Double Detroit Smash?
The twin-fisted blow caught Nomu square in the chest, creating a momentary opening. But to Izuku's dismay, the damage repaired itself almost instantly. Regeneration,
another of the creature's abilities. It has multiple quirks, Daigoro realized. Shock absorption, regeneration, super strength. Just like I have multiple quirks through one for all, Izuku thought grimly. This thing was designed as All Might's counter. The battle escalated as Izuku pushed himself further, his body adapting with each exchange to match the Nomu's terrifying capabilities. The central plaza was reduced to rubble around them, testament to the apocalyptic scale of their confrontation. Just as Izuku prepared another attack, the main entrance of the USJ exploded inward with incredible force. A familiar voice boomed through the facility. "Have no fear, for I am here." All Might stood framed in the doorway, but not as students typically saw him. Gone was his perpetual smile, replaced by a visage of cold fury. His usual flamboyant entrance line was delivered not as a reassurance, but as a warning, a predator announcing itself to prey. "All Might!" the hand villain cackled, scratching his neck frantically with excitement. Finally, the final boss appears. All Might took in the scene with a sweep of his eyes, Izuku battling the Nomu, injured students carrying Aizawa to safety, villains scattered throughout the facility. "Young Midoriya," he called, appearing beside his protege with blinding speed. "You've done well. I'll take it from here." "Be careful, All Might," Izuku panted. The adaptation was still spinning behind him. "This thing, Nomu, it was made to fight you. It has shock absorption and regeneration. Then we'll just have to go beyond its limits," All Might replied grimly, cracking his knuckles. What followed was a clash of titans, All Might and the Nomu exchanging blows that created windstorms with each impact. Izuku could only watch in awe as his mentor demonstrated why he was the world's greatest hero, even in his weakened state. Yet as the battle progressed, Izuku noticed with growing concern the subtle signs of All Might's time limit approaching. Wisps of steam occasionally rising from his massive form, moments of strain that wouldn't be apparent to anyone who didn't know his secret. He's pushing himself too hard, Izuku realized. He was already at his limit before coming here. The hand villain noticed it too, his head tilting with curious observation. "You're not as fast as you used to be, All Might," he taunted. "Could it be that you're weakening?" All Might's response was a renewed barrage of punches, each delivered with the battle cry of Carolina Smash. But the Nomu absorbed each blow, its regeneration counteracting any damage that slipped through. "It's futile," the villain laughed. "Nomu was designed to withstand everything you've got." As All Might continued to battle, Izuku made a decision. Moving to his mentor's side with float and full cowling, he whispered urgently, "We need to hit it with something beyond what it was designed to handle." Together, All Might's eyes widened briefly before he gave an almost imperceptible nod. "Follow my lead, young Midoriya." With perfect synchronization, mentor and student launched a coordinated assault. All Might grappled Nomu from the front while Izuku attacked from behind, preventing the creature from focusing its shock absorption in a single direction. "Now, Midoriya," All Might roared. The spectral wheel behind Izuku expanded to its largest size yet, symbols illuminating in rapid sequence as he channeled one for all to 100%, every cell in his body crackling with unprecedented power. "United States of World Smash," Izuku bellowed, delivering a punch with such catastrophic force that it created a vacuum in its wake. Combined with All Might's simultaneous Detroit Smash from the opposite direction, the attack overwhelmed the Nomu's shock absorption entirely. The creature's body distorted grotesquely at the point of impact before literally disintegrating, obliterated beyond recognition by the combined might of current and future symbols of peace. The resulting shockwave shattered every window in the USJ and temporarily deafened everyone present. When the dust settled, only scattered, unrecognizable remnants of the Nomu remained. The hand villain stared in disbelief, scratching his neck furiously until blood appeared. "Impossible," he hissed. "That thing was perfect. It had every power needed to kill you. You miscalculated," All Might replied, steam now visibly rising from his form as he struggled to maintain his muscular state. "You planned for me alone. You didn't plan for the next generation." Before the villain could respond, the main doors burst open once more as UA's teachers arrived. Present Mike, Midnight, Cementos, Ectoplasm, and Principal Nizu, led by a panting Ida. "It's over, villains," Present Mike announced, his voice quirk accentuating the declaration. "Kurogyri," the hand villain snarled to his mist companion. "We're leaving." The final boss was beaten by a mid-level minion. "This game is broken." Before the heroes could apprehend them, the warp gate enveloped both villains, transporting them away from the USJ.
As the remaining villains were rounded up by the teachers, Izuku sank to his knees, the adaptation will finally fading as his body processed the aftermath of using one for all at 100%. Unlike his first attempt during Aizawa's test, he felt no significant pain or damage. His quirk had successfully adapted to channel the full power without consequences.
Young Midoriya, All Might said quietly, kneeling beside him as steam continued to rise from his form. That was reckless and exactly what I would have done. Pride shone in his increasingly sunken eyes. You've grown tremendously.
We did it together, Izuku replied equally quietly. I couldn't have defeated that thing alone. All Might's time expired fully then, his form shrinking to his true appearance in a burst of steam, thankfully concealed from the other students by the dust still hanging in the air from their battle.
Get to recovery girl immediately, Tashinori urged, coughing slightly. The others will be focusing on the remaining villains and injured.
Izuku nodded, rising unsteadily to his feet. His thoughts turned to his classmates. Had everyone survived? Were Tsuyu and Kendo safe with Aizawa? Before he could investigate further, he was swarmed by his fellow students, all expressing amazement at the display they had witnessed. Dude, you obliterated that monster, Kaminari exclaimed, eyes wide with disbelief. That was the most manly thing I've ever seen, Kirishima added, pumping his hardened fist in the air. Even Todoroki regarded him with newfound respect, though he remained characteristically silent. Is everyone okay? Izuku asked, genuine concern overriding his exhaustion. Did anyone get seriously hurt?
Aizawa-sensei and 13 took the worst of it, Yayorozu reported solemnly. They're being transported to the hospital now. But we all made it, Uraraka added, her usual cheerfulness subdued by the day's events. Thanks to you and All Might.
As medical personnel arrived to assess the students for injuries, Izuku caught sight of Kendo approaching. She had a few minor scrapes but appeared otherwise unharmed.
You and Ajui-san got Aizawa-sensei to safety? He asked immediately.
Kendo nodded. He's in bad shape, but he'll recover. The medics say it could have been much worse if that thing had continued its attack. She fixed Izuku with a penetrating stare. What you did out there, that wasn't just adaptation, was it?
Izuku hesitated, torn between his promise to keep one for all secret and his growing discomfort with concealing the truth from his friends.
It's evolving, he said carefully, becoming something more comprehensive than I ever expected.
Whether she believed him or simply chose not to press further, Kendo merely nodded, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Whatever it is, I'm glad you're on our side.
As they were escorted back to UA's main campus, Izuku's mind was already turning to the future. The USJ attack had proven that real villains, organized, dangerous, and ruthless, were targeting UA specifically. And somehow, they knew about All Might's weakened state. In the back of his mind, he felt the presence of Nana and Daigoro, their consciousness still active after the intense battle. You did well, Midoriya, Nana's voice encouraged. But this is just the beginning. That Nomu thing, Daigoro added grimly, it had multiple quirks artificially implanted. Someone out there has found a way to create beings with powers similar to one for all users. That's not just concerning, it's terrifying. Izuku's resolve hardened as he boarded the bus back to campus. The League of Villains had escaped, which meant they would return, possibly with more Nomus. He needed to master one for all completely, to access more of its hidden powers, to push his adaptations further than ever before. The real test, it seemed, was just beginning. During the 3 days of rest granted to Class 1A following the USJ incident, Izuku secluded himself in his room, focused entirely on internal development. With his eyes closed and body motionless on his bed, an observer might have thought him asleep. But within the vestige world of One for All, intense training was underway. Again, Nana commanded, her spectral form demonstrating a complex aerial maneuver combining float and black whip. You need perfect control over both simultaneously. Izuku's mental projection attempted the technique once more, using float to ascend rapidly before deploying black whip in a spiraling pattern around himself, creating both a defensive shield and offensive capability. Better, Daigoro nodded approvingly. But you're still thinking of them as separate abilities. They should flow into each other seamlessly, like different notes in the same song. The USJ battle showed you can access 100% of One for All's power without damage. Nana continued, circling Izuku's form critically. But your adaptation required extreme circumstances to trigger. We need to help you reach that state at will. Izuku focused intently, feeling the familiar rush of One for All's energy coursing through his consciousness. I think my body adapted specifically to the Nomu's attacks, he theorized. It was processing the exact type of impacts I was experiencing. Precisely, Daigoro agreed. Your adaptation quirk learns most effectively through direct experience. Which means I need to experience more varied challenges, Izuku concluded, understanding dawning. Different types of strain, different energies, different combat scenarios. Nana's expression grew serious. More vestiges will awaken soon. You'll gain access to their quirks as well. Each new power will expand your capabilities, but also increase the complexity of control required. The sports festival is coming, Daigoro reminded him. A perfect opportunity to test yourself against diverse quirks in a controlled environment. As the vestiges continued their guidance, Izuku's physical body remained still, but the adaptation wheel manifested periodically behind him, processing and integrating these mental training sessions into tangible improvements. By the time the 3 days had passed, Izuku had achieved stable control of both Black Whip and Float at up to 50% of One for All's power, a significant advancement from the temporary bursts he'd managed previously. He could maintain full cowling at this level indefinitely without strain, and briefly spike to 75% when necessary. 100% remained accessible only in the most extreme circumstances, when his adaptation will fully activated in response to immediate threats. But Izuku understood this limitation was temporary. With continued development and the guidance of the vestiges, his control would only grow stronger. The true question wasn't whether he could master these powers, but whether he could do so quickly enough to face whatever threats the League of Villains would inevitably bring next. And in the shadows of his consciousness, where the remaining vestiges still slumbered, something stirred, awakened prematurely by the intensity of his training and the resonance of his adaptation quirk. The next test was approaching, and with it new powers waiting to be unlocked. And that's where we leave it. For now, the evolution has only begun, and next time, Deku's gonna push past limits he didn't even know existed. Thanks for riding with me, ChronoCrew champions. You've been showing crazy support, and I'm grateful for every like, every comment, every sub. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button, and drop your craziest fusion ideas in the comments. I'll catch you in part 3. If you're still standing.